All right, so I want to help you with finding a missing side in a right triangle using sine, cosine, and tangent. So the example that I have here is from I Learned Day 7, and it's question 1. And I'm not going to work through the entire assignment unless you have more questions, because I think if you can figure out what to do, what I'm doing here in question 1, you can apply that same concept to all the other questions, okay? So the thing that you got to remember is sine, cosine, and tangent. And you got to remember what those ratios are, right? And remember, the trick to remembering that is SOHCAHTOA. So, meaning opposite over hypotenuse, right? Okay, so sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, ca, meaning cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay, and then toa, meaning that tangent is opposite over adjacent. All right, so those are your ratios. Now looking back at question 1 here, okay, what we're going to want to do first is find the angle that we're going to be kind of basing our sides off of, right? So notice that they have the right angle marked, okay, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is this other angle that they have marked with a degree. So see how they have 28 degrees written in here? So you know that that angle right there, that's the one that we're going to be looking at. And in fact, let me go ahead and put that angle right here so that doesn't throw you off, right there in the corner. Okay, so there's the angle that we're going to be kind of basing our sides off of. And what I mean by that is now we've got to label each side, right? Either the side is opposite, hypotenuse, or adjacent. We got to figure that out, okay? I always like to label my hypotenuse first because I know my hypotenuse. I know it's always going to be opposite of the right angle, right? So this has to be my hypotenuse, okay? This side right here that I'm coloring pink has to be my hypotenuse because it's opposite of the right angle, okay? It's always going to work out that way, okay? Once I've got my hypotenuse labeled, I like to label the opposite side, and it's kind of the same concept, except I start at that angle that I'm referencing everything off of, so the one that's labeled 28 degrees. I go to the opposite side, boom, there's my opposite side, okay? It's always opposite of the angle that I'm using, all right? And that only leaves one other side, right? That side that's labeled 18 right here, that must be my adjacent side. That must be my adjacent side because that's all that's left, okay? So now I've got my 3 sides labeled, okay? But notice that only 2 of those sides have either a number or a variable written on them, right? Like one of the sides, in this case, it's the opposite side, the O, right? There's nothing there other than the O that I just wrote there, but there is nothing labeled there. So I cannot use that side. So, I mean, basically, I could even erase that, like, oh, so that doesn't throw me off. The sides that I'm concerned with here are my adjacent side, because there's an 18 right there, okay? And the hypotenuse, because there's an X right there. So those are the 2 sides. So I'm working with A and H, okay? So now if I come back down here to the ratios that I wrote at the beginning, okay, I want to ask myself which of those ratios has A and H? Which of those ratios has A and H? And you can see that it's cosine, right? So I'm going to be using cosine here, okay? So now I'm almost done. The way that I'm going to solve for this missing side is I know I'm going to use cosine, so I'm going to write out cosine, and then I always put the degree of the angle that I used right after the trigonometric ratio, right? So cosine, what? Cosine 28, okay? Cosine 28, again, because that's the angle 28, right? 28 was the degrees of the angle that I'm using. So cosine 28, and that's going to be equal to, again, remember, it's going to be equal to A over H, okay? What's my A? Well, my A was 18, right? So cosine 28 is going to be equal to 18 over H. And what's my H? Well, my H is unknown, right? My H is X. We don't know that, so I'm just going to put X on the bottom. So cosine 28 is equal to 18 over X. So we're almost done now, right? Now we just got to go ahead and solve for X. So how do we do that, okay? Well, always start with, right, if I separate the left and the right side here, just like any equation, let me zoom in so you can see what I'm looking at, okay? always look at the ratio that we have set up. So in this case, 18 over x. And in your calculator, always start out with that number that's in that fraction, right? So in this case, it's 18, okay? All right, now the next question that you ask yourself is, okay, let me clear everything off in my calculator first real quick. There we go. All right, so I always start with 18, and then I ask myself, okay, I'm either going to multiply by cosine 28 or I'm going to divide by cosine 28, right? I start out with a number in the fraction, in this case it was 18, and then I ask, okay, do I multiply or divide? Well, if the number's on top, listen closely here, okay? If the number's on top, you're going to divide, okay? If the number's on the bottom, you're going to multiply. In this case, notice that 18 is on the top of the fraction. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 18, and then I'm going to hit divided by, okay? And if you got a graphing calculator at home, remember, you just type in the graphing calculator, you hit cos 28. My calculator's a little weird because it's on the iPad. I have to type in 28 then cos, right? So if you're using a calculator that's different than the ones we use in class, you might have to play around with it a little bit. You might have to type in 28 cos, okay? That's what I have to do. But on the graphing calculators we use at school, you type in cos 28. Anyway, 18 divided by, and I hit type in 28 cos, okay? And then I hit equals, I hit enter, and it says 20.4. 20.4, I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, of course, okay? It's 20.38, so that's gonna round up to 20.4. So I'm gonna go to my answers. 20.4 is what I'm looking for. Bingo, there it is, 20.4. And that's how you do it, okay? So let me zoom back out, and just a quick recap here. Remember, you're using SOHCAHTOA, sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, so I would write those at the top of your paper wherever you're doing the work so you can remember the ratios, okay? Find the angle that you're going to be referencing. In this case, it was the 28-degree angle there, okay? Then label each of your sides. Figure out which of the three ratios you're going to use. In our case, we use cosine because adjacent and hypotenuse were labeled, so I used A over H. I used cosine, okay? And then you're just going to write out cosine or whatever the trigonomic ratio you're using is, okay? You're just going to write that equation out, okay? Set it up. In my case, it was A over H, 18 over X, okay? And then the last thing, again, to recap, remember, if the number in the fraction is on top, you're going to divide by, okay? And if the number in the fraction is on the bottom, you're going to multiply by. Okay, but there you go. If you need to rewind as much as possible for you to understand it. And if you've got any other questions, just let me know and I can make another video or work with you on it.